Welcome back to the In No Hurry podcast. This is your host, Colt Douglas Claiborne. Excited to be back with you guys this week for another episode. This is episode 3 of season 6 of the show. So excited to bring you another conversation this week with a new friend. Her name is Kim Patton, and we connected sometime last year to try to schedule this conversation. And so excited to bring it to you. This conversation, I think, is a really important one. She is an author, and more importantly, she is a parent, and she has developed a tool called the Foster Mama Journal. And she shares her testimony this week and also in other books that she's written about her journey of being a foster parent and then how that has led to her being an adoptive parent. And this week, she shared her journey with infertility, which, if you know what my wife Emily and I have gone through, I've written about it on Substack. I've talked about it here. We have been going through infertility as well. And that's a topic near and dear to my heart. But I found this conversation to be so enlightening, so beautiful to hear how she and her husband navigated that journey of their life, how they dealt with the longing to be parents, how they responded to the call to be foster parents, which is not at all an easy thing to do, and how it led to their adoption of their 2 girls. And I just think it's such a beautiful story. I think adoption is such a wonderful and beautiful thing. And I always have said it's one of the most Christian things that somebody can do. And so I'm just very excited to bring this conversation with Kim to you this week. So thanks for tuning in. Here is my conversation with author Kim Patton. Kim, welcome to the show. I'm excited to talk with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Cole.
We just chatted for like 30 minutes before hitting record, so we figured we might as well hit record before we start having any other good conversations. But I'm really excited to have you on here just to talk about your writing, your journey. We have a similar journey that we'll get into here in a little bit. But I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners. Who is Kim? What are you into? What are your hobbies? What besides writing and doing podcasts, what are the things you're into?
Well, I keep really busy chasing my little girls around, so that's my biggest priority. We've been married for 15 years. We celebrated last year in Punta Cana. That was like the best week of my life. Um, and then I love to read. I've been soaking up so many good books. I read a lot, and people ask me all the time, like, how do you have time to read? And I'm like, I make time. I force it into the day because it's kind of my survival. So, reading a lot of really good books. I do not like cooking. I like being outside. Um, I like a good party. That's
Yeah.
me.
You and my wife probably would be good friends then because she is the biggest reader that I know. She's got she'll be excited that I'm plugging this, but she's got an Instagram account where she talks about all of the books that she's read. And I wish that I could remember how many books she read last year. It was an insane amount. We've got a massive, I would call it a library. She'd probably tell me that it's not technically a library because I guess a library has to have X amount of books, but she's got a lot of books downstairs in what we call our reading room. So she is a great, she loves reading. It's her biggest hobby. So what kind of books do you enjoy reading?
I'm a sucker for memoir all the time. I started Viola Davis's memoir a few weeks ago. I haven't gotten back to it, but it's just her story of growing up with her family. Not a great situation at times, and she writes with just searing detail. And it's hard to read, but I feel like it's important to honor people's stories and just to see where they've come from. So I love a good memoir. I mentioned to you Andre Agassi's memoir, Open, is probably the best book I've ever read. Um, but I also read a lot of Christian nonfiction and kind of self-helpy stuff.
Yeah.
But what usually gets me is just somebody's personal story. I don't read a ton of fiction. I started a fiction book last night and I was like, okay, this is a long book. It's by Kristen Hanna. And I thought, I'm committed. I have to commit because it will be good. But I have a hard time with fiction. I have to really believe the characters. And so most of the time I read nonfiction.
Okay, so then maybe you and my wife would have some disagreements there. Kristen Hanna is one of her favorite authors. In
Okay.
fact, on her bookshelf, she's got a whole Kristen Hanna section. So she reads, I would say, at least 80% fiction. Um, she'll read Christian books as well, but she's really, really, really into fiction, which I am not. I pretty much read exclusively nonfiction, and I am a tennis coach. I played tennis for most of my life, so I need to read Andre Agassi's book. I actually have not read that yet. So you've talked about it a couple times and said how good it was, and um,
It's it's like life shattering. It really is a phenomenal book. He wrote it with J.J. Moringer,
okay,
and he wrote The Tender Bar, which turned into a movie. So if you want to get familiar with that author, I haven't seen the movie, but I think it would be worth checking out. And then he also wrote, yeah, The Tender Bar. So um there's also like a huge place in my heart for comedy memoir. And so Harrison Scott Key has been one of my recent favorites. He wrote um, How to Stay Married, and that's also just a life-changing book. And he's funny. So if you need some funny, Tina
yeah.
Fey, Amy Poehler, Colin Jost, Kevin Hart. I read Kevin Hart's memoir, and there's like puppies crawling all over
I
him.
didn't even know he had a memoir. That's funny.
I mean, the dude writes. Like he also curses, but there are regular words in that book. It's so funny though. It's worth it.
Yeah, that's great. I just bought last summer. I'm looking at it. I have Allen Iverson's the NBA player. He had a memoir come out, and he was my one of my favorite all-time athletes of my lifetime. And I haven't got a chance to read the book yet, but I was so excited to see that he wrote a book. And I love listening to audiobooks, especially if the author narrates it. And so I was disappointed that like he didn't get to narrate his book because I was like, man, his story is so cool. Just like the journey that he went on. He was a really good high school football player, actually wanted to play football, but he was a little bit smaller, so he went to basketball instead. I mean, played basketball in college, and then was one of the best NBA players of his generation. And uh, grew up in a rough area, and like I want to hear his story, and I want to hear him talk because like he's just a very animated guy. So yeah, I love athlete memoirs. I love Christian nonfiction. That's mostly what I read is Christian nonfiction. But I also like I don't read a ton of self-help. I read Atomic Habits a couple years ago. That was a really good book. I've read, I don't know if you heard of Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, but that was a
Hmm.
really, to me, that's like one of my favorite books when it comes to like talking about creativity and that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
I really liked that one, but that's cool. I need to add
And
the Andre Agassi book to my list.
yes, Anne Lamott, she's everybody always talks about her writing book Bird by Bird, but she also has written other nonfiction operating instructions. And then when her son had their first child, she became a grandmother, so she wrote about that journey. And I just like her perspective because she is deeply spiritual and she's funny
Hmm.
and she's a good writer. So it's kind of a combination of all of those. But Bird by Bird is one of the best books on writing. And then also Annie Dillard, I think she wrote Writing Instructions or something like that. That's also a really good book on writing.
Yeah. I'm curious because what I enjoy about reading is how often I mean I feel like it does make me a better writer. I know that's obvious, but like a lot of times like I'll read books and like I'll hear an author say something that in a way where I know that truth. This is more specifically when it comes to Christian nonfiction books, but like when you read, especially memoirs, or you hear somebody's story, what does that do for you even as a writer? Like do you feel inspired? Does it I don't know, get the creative juices flowing? I feel like that does for me, and I think that's one of the biggest values of reading.
Yes, honestly, and you can, boo me off the stage if you don't love Taylor Swift as much as I do, but listening to Taylor Swift's music makes me want to
Yeah.
write,
Yeah.
and watching a movie makes me want to write.
Yeah.
Um, Reading doesn't always make me want to write because I value that person for the writer that they are, and I
Yeah.
don't necessarily feel the similarities. But as far as creativity, I am most inspired to go write when I watch a movie or I hear a song
Hmm.
because, or like I watch, we used to watch The Voice like
Yeah.
religiously, and I will just sit there and see this person pouring out their heart. And I know that it comes from the deepest parts of them. And I know what's in the deepest parts of me. And so it makes me want to go express myself. So I guess the courage, like I see their bravery and their courage and laying it all out there, or watching America's Got Talent. Like a girl could be up there doing gymnastics or dancing, or someone could be singing. And I'm just inspired by their courage. But reading for me is total entertainment. I started reading in 2015 quite a bit because my sister-in-law told me if you want to be a better writer, you need to read. And I was like, well, I don't really know where to start. What are good books? What does that even mean? And so she gave me a list, and that list of like 15 books, that's all I needed. I read probably half of them
Hmm.
in a very quick succession, and then I just was launched. And I've never turned back. I do read about 100 a year, and I don't finish all of them because ain't nobody got time for a bad book. So if I don't like it, I
Yeah.
stop. But at least I go for it, and I do complete close to 100 books a year. And it just gives me a wide range of like all of the things. And that is not including children's books because we go to the library and get children's books, and that's super fun too, and I'm inspired by knowing that an author put together this story about a bear. I mean, it's just they did it, so I want to go and do it too.
Yeah. That's great. My wife is a huge Taylor Swift fan, and I like Taylor Swift too. Not nearly as much as my wife does, but I will say we watched I guess it was like the Eras Tour documentary or something, and
Yes.
that gave me an entirely new appreciation for her because you see how much work went into that, and it seemed like, and maybe this is because like she is the same age as us. We're all 89 babies. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like I feel like I can resonate just with her as a human. She doesn't feel like she's obviously like, I mean, probably the most famous person in the world, but like she also at the same time feels like just a normal human being. And seeing her relate with all the different dancers that were in her show and all the other people that worked for the show, it was really cool to kind of have that behind the scenes. I'm assuming you watch this. I'm talking about it
Oh,
as
I haven't because I don't have Netflix. And
okay.
so I've
Well, I'm giving
Googled a
you
couple
some.
times.
Yeah,
I'm like, how can I watch the Taylor Swift Eras Tour movie? And the internet tells me you can't because you don't have Netflix. And I'm like, but why? But is there another way? Like, where can I get it? So I will find a way at some point to watch that. But
yeah.
I find a lot of inspiration from her because of the way she relates to people and like carries on, like you
Hmm.
said, those deep relationships with the people in her life. And she's a mutually respectful person. It's not that she puts herself on the bottom rung. Like of course she's humble, but she's not that humble. But
Yeah,
she puts others before her. She does
yeah,
like ask their opinion. She doesn't stomp all over people. And her songwriting, I mean, I just really appreciate her turns of phrases. Like she puts a lot of work into her voice isn't a big belty voice. It can be at moments, but um her song like I can do it with a broken heart. I love the phrase like I cry a lot, but I am so productive. And
hmm,
to me that's like Enneagram 3. Yeah, we cry a lot, we're super emotional, but we are so productive and we get things done. And
yeah,
she is that kind of person. She's so driven by the desire to write songs that she'll do almost anything to sit. Like that's her first priority is like sit and write the song. And I just think that God has gifted her in amazing ways. And I mean, her music has helped me, even though, yeah, she's a pop star, but she's a writer.
yeah, yeah. It is really cool, and I appreciate just how she's able to tell a story. And I what I also appreciate is how much she's always thinking ahead in terms of the story she wants to tell. It's like everything has a plan and a purpose, and it's usually a lot of times it's an Easter egg for something else that's going to happen, which I think is really cool, and that takes a lot of forethought and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not easy to do because
Mm-mm.
it's one thing to be a good musician, a good songwriter, and like you write a good song when it comes to you, but when you're thinking of it thematically because I mean, growing up when we were kids, and I know this is the case with our parents, but like albums used to be like a story. Like song one would lead into song two, and then you'd listen to an album, and that was all a story. Now, for a lot of artists, an album is more or less a collection of songs. It's just singles because they know that's what people listen to. So I appreciate when it feels like an album is still a story, and then obviously her entire show was a story down to even just like the tiniest details of the stage and the outfits. And so she's not my favorite artist by any means. She's not like who I listen to all the time, but I definitely appreciate all of that. And I think from a creative standpoint, it is really cool to see that. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate it enough because, they just think, oh, she's a pop star, like whatever, whatever. But like, yeah, there's a reason why she is so popular and a reason why she's so talented. So
Hmm.
definitely, I totally resonate with.
Welcome to
Yeah,
the Taylor Swift show with Cole and Kim.
yeah, yeah. Did not think did nobody's listening thinking Cole's going to be the Taylor Swift guy, but here we are. Yeah, uh, and I don't know if you listen to a band called Judah and the Lion, but they're
I've
one of
heard
my
of them. Hmm.
so they're I'd say right now are probably the band that I listen to the most, and I resonate a lot with their creativity as well. The lead singer, Judah, he's a Christian and he also has done Christian music, but which I'm not like advocating for this or anything, but like in some of his Christian songs, like when it's been like anger, like he's cussed in it. And I'm like, I just really value authenticity. And he is
Hmm.
super authentic. And his last album, the Jude and the Lion, their last album was all about like he went through a pretty messy divorce, and so the songs are all about him navigating the five stages of grief. And so that
Mm.
felt like a story, like from song one to the end of the album, and that was really cool. So I just appreciate any artist that's able to do that and be able to tell a story that isn't just, a catchy tune that is going to be popular on the radio, which that
Hmm.
takes skill, don't get me wrong, but
Hmm.
it's a little different. So
Yeah, don't make us do that, but
yeah. Yeah, I can't sing except when I'm in the shower, but yeah, I appreciate those people that have the skill to use music and tell a story. Like I'll be in some mood someday and I'll listen to a song and I'm just like, thank God we have music because like the message, if you just break down the words, might be really simple, but then you put it to music and then it just hits a little differently. So Tanner, actually, who I had on my podcast, we were talking about him earlier. He got into poetry because he grew up in kind of the pop punk, emo punk rock era that we all grew up in with like MySpace and all that. And so he was like, I wanted to be in a band, but he didn't have the music skills. So he had all of these words and lyrics in his mind for songs, didn't know what to do with them, and so he kind of turned them into poetry, and that's how he got
Mm.
into writing poetry. So
Yeah,
kind of
that makes
cool.
sense. I did some research a few years ago about like why does music resonate with us so much? Why does it make us come alive? Why does it make us feel these things? And the closest thing I came to was one article talked about our heartbeat and how our heartbeat is a rhythm and like our body. I didn't get a really good answer, to be honest, of why music stuck with us so much. But um, God created us a certain way,
Hmm.
and He created us on purpose. He created us to create music, but that means there's something inside of us that connects to melody and harmony. And there's so many expressions of music. Like you have bands, you have singers, you have people that play the piano, you have poetry, which has a rhythm and a cadence to it, and songwriting. So it's very obvious that that is something that is in a lot of us. And if we can't sing or if we can't play an instrument, we can enjoy music, even if it's screamo. Like it's an expression of what's going on in our hearts. I mean, I was in a shop the other day and it was a darker vibe, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. And I was listening to the music and he was singing about heaven and hell. And it kind of struck me like this guy that was very obviously in a dark place was just like, I don't deserve heaven and I'll see you in hell, or just singing about big themes of
Yeah.
our lives. And he's singing like
Yeah.
this guy is that's how he's expressing himself. So
Yeah.
um I would be interested. I did see a book in the library, but it was way too boring, so I didn't check it out, but it was on the topic of music and why we are drawn to music and what it means for us to express ourselves through music. So I feel like there's a scientific reason of why we're wired that way. I just haven't found it. I just know that music is
Yeah.
incredibly powerful and there's got to be a reason.
Charlie Puth has actually broken this down. I've watched some videos where he's like phenomenal. And I think Taylor Swift even has a line in one of her songs where she says like she thinks she like thought Charlie Puth should be more famous or something like that. I think that's a lyric in one of her songs. But he's like a musical theory genius. And his videos on TikTok are really fascinating because he actually broke down like why certain song like the saxophone for instance, why does it resonate, and it's like had something to do with it matches like the frequency of a baby crying or something like that. And he was talking about different instruments, so I think what you're talking about with the heartbeat, I'd have to go back and watch his videos again, but like I think he was getting into that where it's like certain songs like when you're younger, there's a reason why like nursery rhymes or something have a certain pattern to them because they're supposed to mimic the heartbeat or like the rhythm of your heart at that age. So there really is a lot of science behind it and why it resonates with us. So it was really fascinating, and he was explaining it well. It's been a while since I watched the video, so I'm relaying it terribly here. But go check out Charlie Puth on social
I
media, and I'm sure
will,
you'll find the
yeah.
videos. But yeah, it was a really cool breakdown because I never had thought of it that way. But that's pretty cool. Well, I want to get into, I guess, some of the main reason why we're talking. Obviously, you're an author. You've had several books come out. You have another one coming out next year. Mainly, I guess today we want to talk about your book, Foster Mama Journal, and I'd love to hear your journey of kind of how not only this book came to be, but also just your story. I guess to kind of tee the readers up, you and I have a shared journey in terms of infertility, which I've talked about on this show a couple times and written about on Substack, and I know that's part of your journey. So, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love for you to share your story. I guess you said you've been married for 15 years. So, what did that look like in terms of the infertility journey when you guys decided to adopt? I know this is kind of every question at once, but I just kind of walk me through your journey, and then yeah, I'd love to hear kind of the how you walked with God through all of that as well.
I found your post on Substack at some point, and I was surprised to hear from a man's perspective the journey of infertility. And the men's perspective is not often talked about. I've been writing for Waiting in Hope Ministries for a while, and they focus on helping women through infertility. They have groups online and ministries that help couples go through infertility and really focus on their faith throughout it. So that's the hope part of Waiting in Hope. And then also, they released a book a few years ago, and if you pay attention, anytime Kim is in the book, that's me. They asked for, some stories, some personal stories and quotes, and I had to sign a release saying that I was okay with them quoting me in the book. And I think one of the quotes is me talking about the awkwardness of scheduling extracurricular activities when you're trying for a baby and how weird that is and how you don't think that that's what your life is going to come down to, but it kind of does.
Yeah.
So we got married in 2010, very young, right out of college. I was actually still finishing up college, and Kevin was starting his master's degree. And then we moved to Dallas, Texas, and he started seminary at Dallas Theological Seminary. So we kind of decided on the 5-year plan, and I did not know how to last 5 years without trying for a baby because I was
Hmm.
so excited. But, all my friends were having babies or close to or already raising kids. And it was hard for me to go to work every day and have a cubicle job because I just didn't feel like that was me. It didn't fit my personality. But my husband was in school. So that's the agreement we had, was that I would work while he was in school. So we moved in 2015, and he started a job in Florida, and it was time. It was like go time. We were like, okay, now we can start trying for a baby. We did the 5-year plan. We were successful with the 5-year plan. Now we're free. And just with time, we realized, this isn't really happening.
Hmm.
It was confusing. It was like shocking, but in a very quiet way because it was just me. And I was like, what is going on? This is very weird. So I read online that they don't diagnose infertility until you've been trying for a year. So that was kind of our mark was, okay, it's been a year. The problem was we didn't have money to really do much. So we did some of the testing that was, on the cheaper end, but we couldn't go for extensive testing because the next test cost $1,000 and there was no way that we could afford that. We had to wait until we could afford the test, and then we went forward with the test, and they just kind of gave us a blanket, like, well, you have unexplained infertility.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, you guys are the smart people, so can you expound on that? Like, can I try Clomid? Like, what can we do? And they're like, you can do IUI or IVF. And I'm just thinking, that doesn't sound promising, and it doesn't
Hmm.
sound like an answer. Um, So I just I just waited and I kind of sat in denial and I just asked God to bring me my children. I just assumed that he would make it happen. Um that was that was a few years of me sitting with just the reality of, okay, well, I'm not getting pregnant, but I'm not able to do anything else. So I'll just keep doing what we're doing and hope and pray that it happens.
Hmm.
Um, it was a really hard realization when Kevin and I had to come face to face with, okay, this is not happening for us. So we have to do something else.
Hmm.
And I was 30. I was in a bathroom stall at church, and there was just something about that day. I was just extra emotional, and I was just crying in the bathroom stall. I was wearing a skirt, and I sat on the little toddler stool and I was just crying. Toilet paper, shredding in my hands because toilet paper is terrible Kleenex. And I went home. I just said, Kevin, I can't even go to church. We had been in like the small groups ahead of church, and I just was
Hmm.
like, I'm going home. So I went home. I laid on my couch for that whole day, and I just grieved. And so when we're talking about the stages of grief when it comes to infertility, I was in denial for a few years. And then that one day, it's like I grieved so hard and so intensely. And I called a friend and she came over and she sat with me in my grief and she walked me through it. She was incredibly patient, compassionate, kind. We laughed about the things that people struggling with infertility can laugh at because nobody else would understand. But that this is the bitter grief that we're going through, the bitter sarcasm that comes out when you
Yeah.
can't get pregnant. Um, and at the end of that day, I think I think God just healed something in my heart because I needed to do that. And so moving forward after that, I really was able to face our future and with my husband make really hard decisions of how we were going to grow our family.
Yeah. Yeah, we also did the well, first of all, thank you for sharing all that. I know that's a lot. That's it hearing your story, it's for me it's easy to resonate with, and I hope people that are listening that maybe have gone through this can resonate as well. We waited 5 years as well, and it was intentional, and we thought, we want to have time together as a couple. We really valued that, and I don't want to look back and regret that decision of like, well, what if we had tried earlier when we were younger? Like, there's no, I think I wrote this in my essay. I don't remember exactly how I said it, but like thinking about the past, it's not going to make anything better, essentially. So we did not regret that at all. We took a 5 year trip to. It was really about 5.5 years after being married. We went to Europe, and it was like, that's kind of like the line of demarcation where like, okay, like we want to do this, and then we want to start trying for a family, and so the first I mean, I just honestly thought like, wow, we're gonna have a kid soon. And then here we are almost 3 years later. And after you and I get done talking, we have a telehealth call with a fertility doctor. So, we at least are hopeful about being on a path with trying to find answers. But yeah, it's been very, very difficult. My wife had a laparoscopic surgery last year, and they were like, yeah, she doesn't have endometriosis. And then I did testing on my end, and it was like, yeah, everything looks clean. And it's like, I kind of wanted an answer of like, hey, here's what's wrong, just so we could
Mhm.
say that's why it's not happening. And so, yeah, it's been really difficult. We are so grateful and happy for our friends that have been able to have children, and we love seeing their families grow. But yeah, it is hard to feel like we're not part of that club,
Mhm.
and it's hard to not kind of start to wonder like, will that ever happen? And I think I wrote this in my essay, but like for me, it's really been a race against time because my father's getting older. He just went through a battle with cancer last year, and there was a point where I was really scared that he might not make it. And I was just like, my mom already passed away, so what if my dad doesn't get to see my kids? What if my kids don't get to meet my mom or my dad? And so I think that's part why I'm feeling a lot of pressure is just like this race against time. So I'm curious, was that something that played into your story at all? I mean, I'm 36, and so like I'll be 37 this year, and so it's like you typically start getting closer to 40, and you're like, which is weird for me to even think that I'm getting close to 40. I still feel like I'm very young. Uh,
We are. We are. We might be in denial right now, but
yeah,
it's coming for
I
us.
I can't even believe this saying that I'm 36. Like I feel like I'm still like 25, um, but did you feel that where it was just like, you start looking at like the time clock and you're like, hey, I thought by now I'd have this, or, if we don't have a child by this point, then X, Y, and Z. I know that's been the pressure for me. So I'm curious how you navigated that.
Yes, because fertility is focused on your age. I was always told, like, don't have kids after 35 because the risks are higher. And any woman who has been to the doctor pregnant around 35 knows that they call it a geriatric
Yeah.
pregnancy after 35. And that's just
That's
because
comforting, golly.
it is. It's the technical medical term that they say
Jeez.
if you're pregnant after 35, it's called a geriatric pregnancy and potentially a high risk pregnancy.
Yeah.
So when I was 30, the breakdown for me was when it was like September. So it was already hard to turn 30 years old with no kids, but then a couple months later, I was like, I'm 30 with no kids. It's like the birthday was over, reality sank in that I'm 30. And in my mind, and this is funny, I always thought that I'd have five kids. So I always did okay, 26, 28, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34. I can fit them in. I can still fit them in. And then I turned like 28 and I was like, okay, 28, 30, 32, 34. I can only fit four. And that's all being 2 years apart. So that's just how my brain worked from the time we started trying when I was 26 and I knew that I could fit them in. And then as I got closer, I was like, oof, 28, I was still okay. And I think that's part of what played into my denial was like, well, I'm still only 28. Like, it's okay. And then
Mhm.
29, it was like, yeah, like we're still good. But I think after 30, it was like, I can't fit all my kids in the next couple of years. Um, and it just surprised me that me being such a go-getter personality that I would allow myself to get to 30 years old without having the biggest desire of my life. But
Mhm.
and you asked about like how did it affect my walk with God? That I think is okay. So in James, we talk about faith and works.
Mhm.
How much of infertility is faith and how much is works? I think personally, with our journey, it came down to works because we had to make the decision to foster or adopt. Um, if I would have just waited and done nothing, that would be 100% faith, 0% works. But because I felt the Lord telling me, like, your kids are out there, go get them. and he gave me the peace to move forward with adoption, I started knocking on doors. And so then it became less of faith, less of waiting for God to give me things, and more of, you know what? There's kids out there who need a family. So let me take care of the part of my heart that is hardened toward foster care and adoption. Let me ask God to soften that part of me so that I can be ready to accept the kids that He gives me. Because there are kids out there that need a family, period. There are
Mhm.
thousands of kids out there that need a family. And it came down to finances. And my husband and I had a lot of really hard conversations because early in our marriage, we had a lot of disagreements about money. And so I think part of me was afraid to talk to him about adopting a baby because it's just expensive to do an
Yeah.
infant domestic adoption. International adoption was totally out of the question because of the expenses, but
Yeah.
even infant domestic adoption is incredibly expensive. And so he was looking into foster care adoption, and sibling group adoption. But my heart wasn't there yet. And I had a really hard time advocating for myself. But I also knew that if I didn't seek permanency, if I didn't, like, foster care is not permanency because the state wants you to foster these children with the intent of reunifying them with their birth families, if possible, if safe. And that could take a year or two. But I knew that if I signed on to that, I would be discrediting my desire for a baby. And I felt like that wouldn't be a wise decision because I probably, like, my heart would be held back. And Kevin understood that. And so we did decide to move forward with adoption because it was permanent. And I wasn't sure what age the child would be. Of course I wanted a baby, but I was my heart was softening towards the idea of adopting older children. And it was really beautiful when we started knocking on all these doors because um it was exciting. It was really exciting to just throw ourselves out there and look like absolute fools to all these strangers because we were like, here's our adoption profile. We're looking for a baby. We are seeking to adopt. It's like we made a decision together as a team to be an adoptive, hopeful family. And that
Mhm.
felt really, really good. But I wouldn't have had all that peace if I hadn't gone through denial, anger, all the stages of grief, and then as well as surrendering what I really wanted to the Lord and saying, like, okay, if you say my children are out there, then okay, I'm going to go find them. But I
Mhm.
kind of grieved the fact that I was probably not going to ever be pregnant. And that was a grief. That was a heavy, huge ball of grief that you have to deal with. But once you kind of tackle that, or once I tackled that, I felt like God gave me the peace to say, okay, my kids are out there. Let's go find them.
Yeah. That's, I think, a beautiful way of framing it. And just here to my right, I have a journal that I bought sometime last year that I want it to be a journal for my wife and I to write in to our future kid. And the last time that I wrote in it, I was making sure that I wrote it in language that would accommodate for if we choose to adopt, because the way that I'm approaching it is like there is a child that God has for us. It may be one that comes naturally, uh, or it may be one that we adopt. But I believe that there's a child out there that God has ordained for us to be parents of. And so I'd eventually, like, I want to give this journal to our child. And I want them to know that regardless of how they got to us, that we were planning for them to be here. And that could be through adoption. It could be, like I said, through natural birth. But my mother-in-law was adopted. And, my wife and I talk about this a lot, about how, her family would not be what it was without adoption. And my mother-in-law wrote a children's book about her adoption story. It's called "Mommy, Who Do I Look Like?" And it was about growing up and just realizing that she didn't really look like her siblings, and uh, I think adoption is such a beautiful thing. I think I've always said it's one of the most Christ-like things we can do. And so I will say, like, for a number of years though, I wouldn't say that I had a hardened heart toward it, but I think there was a big part of me that was like viewing that almost like a last resort. And I was like, I definitely want to have my own child and see my own, image in my child. But I don't know, the more that this has gone on, the more that I've been softened up to it and it just been like, regardless of how we have a child, like we are ready to love and raise a child. And if that's through adoption, then that's beautiful as well. And I think that's also come, I honestly, I can't remember what it was, but I think there was some kind of a movie or a show that we watched where a character was adopted and I just visually saw it in a different way. And so we were talking earlier kind of about how music can affect us and things like that. But I think there was something that just like I saw it in a different way and it hit me in a different way. So yeah, I love that you shared that story. You mentioned an older child. How old was the child when you adopted them?
So Kevin was looking at these heart galleries. We were in Florida at the time and they had these heart galleries. And so there was sibling groups. There was a two sisters. They were like 8 and 9 years old. And I just saw them and I thought, oh, okay, okay, I'm willing. And we sought their like we clicked on their profile and reached out to their caseworker and they required separate bedrooms at the time. And so we only had one extra bedroom, and so we weren't able to move forward with that. There was other children. One little boy was 1 year old, um, and then there was lots of children available for adoption, and that's just a really hard thing because you're looking at their pictures online, and um, every kid needs a home and needs a
Hmm.
family. And at the same time, you and your family are trying to figure out, like, well, what's best for us? What's best for this kiddo? And during that time, we were seeking birth mothers. And so we did get matched with a birth mother, and we were able to adopt our daughter 3 weeks after we were matched with the birth mother. She gave birth and signed the papers. And so we were able to take our daughter home at birth.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um, and then several months later, she was pregnant again and asked if we would adopt her biological sister. And so we have two sisters, 15 months apart, and they are amazing, beautiful, crazy little monsters. And our life has never been the same. It has been an absolute whirlwind. Our oldest just turned 6, and we go and we visit their birth mother every year in Florida. So they have a relationship with their birth family. The birth mother and her mother. And so they both know they're adopted. They know they grew in Ashley's tummy, and we share pictures and have conversations with Ashley. And I think that you mentioned the gospel. Um, the gospel has come up in the last several years as far as adoption being a beautiful part of the gospel. Having an open relationship with their birth mother, I feel like to me has shown me the gospel, the
Hmm.
way my husband has very compassionately led us through this adoption life. I feel like he's led our family well when it comes to interacting with Ashley and just seeing her as a precious daughter of God. And I mean, she makes choices that we wouldn't make for ourselves, but we honor her as the birth mother, and we have a very positive relationship and viewpoint of that whole situation. But motherhood and parenthood is also very sanctifying. It has been a challenge to have girls so close in age. We've had significant health struggles. We've had behavior issues.
Hmm.
We've often wondered why one daughter does this well and the other daughter does not. One daughter has significant delays and the other daughter does not. Um, and we were just talking about this yesterday and this morning. My husband's like, I want more answers. Like, I want more clarification. And I'm like, well, if you want more clarification or answers, then you want more diagnoses. And I don't want more diagnoses. He's like, yeah, but I want to know why she's doing this. And I'm like, okay. So what's normal and what's not normal? And we have doctors who have been helping us through for years. But at the end of the day, he wants to know how to help his daughter.
Hmm.
And he hurts that she hurts. And I do too. But like you don't know what's going on in everybody else's homes with their kids.
Hmm.
We've had troubles with her through her toddlerhood. I mean, toddlerhood is a very messy
Yeah.
season anyways, and so most kids are kind of like semi-psychopaths when they're toddlers, and so I mean, to be honest, like what's going on here? Is she just a toddler or, is there more to it? And there was a lot more to it. She underwent surgery in
Mhm.
December, and that has helped a lot with like the physical problems we were having. Um, but still, I'm like, is she going to be ready for kindergarten? I'm asking her preschool teacher, is she ready for kindergarten? And I'm asking her doctor, what do you think? And the doctor said, yeah, I think that kindergarten is going to be okay. And I'm like, is she going to have an IEP? Is she what's like, so, so sanctifying us through our children and, yes, adoption is an absolute miracle. And God gave me my babies. I mean, I had baby fever for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then God gave me two in a row. And I will never have baby fever again
Yeah.
because I did it. I did it. I did it so hardcore for 2 years, raising our first daughter and then our second daughter who was in the NICU. And so it's like I got kind of like extra baby cuddles because she came home less than 5 pounds. So I kind of like that. I like that. Obviously, I don't love that she had health issues because of that, but I like that I got a full grown healthy baby girl and I got a NICU baby that was extra small. And so I
Hmm.
was able to live their infancy as an exhausted mama. And it was hard. It nearly killed me. But I think God knew that I needed my cup to be pretty overflowing because if I didn't, I would have wanted more.
Hmm.
But I'm very thankful. I come from a family of seven. I'm one of seven. I wanted five kids. God gave me two. And I am incredibly grateful that He allowed me the opportunity to raise two babies from birth. And then I've gotten to fill my cup further with foster care. And that's where the Foster Mama Journal came from, was
Hmm.
my interaction with other foster moms and just seeing like how much we sacrifice for the kids in our home that did not come from our bodies. At one point, I looked around the house and I'm like, I am not biologically related to any of the 10 people in my house.
God.
Isn't that
10?
crazy?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
husband, which we don't live in West Virginia, so I am not biologically related to my husband. My daughters, no biological relation. And six teenagers. Well, seven teenagers. I don't know. We've had a range of
Yeah.
5, 4, 7, 8. So yeah, no biology relation at all. And I love this tagline, love beyond blood, because it just speaks to there's family you're born with and there's family you choose. And my life is full of family and friends that I have chosen. And I am absolutely just beyond grateful for the gifts that God has given me in people that I'm not
Hmm.
even blood related to at all.
As you were talking, I remembered it was, I don't know if you watched the show Shrinking with Harrison Ford and Jason Segel. It's on Apple TV, and this is where I was having the thoughts
Oh,
about
the adoption
adoption.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the premise of the show is Harrison Ford and Jason Segel are therapists, and they start to kind of, more so Jason Segel, they kind of blur some lines in terms of like boundaries. They get really close with their patients, and my wife is a mental health therapist, so like we watch it, and it's a good show, but it's totally like unethical in some ways how they would do things. But at the end of season two, there's like a scene where they're all together for Thanksgiving, and it's like, all the people that they work with, and then just like their neighbors, and just like the surrounding group of people that was a giant family. And there's a gay couple in the show, and they decided to adopt a baby girl, and that was a big part of I think season two. I don't know if that happened in season three or not when the actual child was born. I can't remember, but like that's a big part of it. And it was like all of these people were going to help raise this child. And it was like, basically the birth mother was trying to decide which couple, she would basically sign the baby over to. And they were just showing, like here's all the people that are going to love on this child. And I realized that would be the case in our life. We have so many friends and family that would help raise this child. And I think that was really like an eye opener of like, regardless of how a child comes to us, they're going to be so loved. And so that's why I've started to take the approach of like not just thinking of if we get pregnant naturally, but also like what if we adopt a baby, like that baby comes to us that way. So yeah, I'm so grateful that you shared the story. I had a guest on my show really when I first started this show. I think it was like one of the third or fourth episodes. Her name is Manda Carpenter, and she's an author, and she has written a lot about her time being a foster parent, and has talked a ton about that. And that was probably one of the first conversations that I had in depth about foster parenting. And I used to be a high school teacher, and so I had some students that were in the foster care system, so I saw it from that perspective. But I'm curious, what would you want listeners to know if they're considering adoption or they're looking at being a foster parent? What are just some of the important parts of that whole process that you wish you had known beforehand that you didn't know, but that you would, want to pass on to future foster parents or adoptive parents?
Being trauma informed is the number one. The only thing we did before we adopted was just get started, just scratch the edge of like, okay, if we're adopting children from hard places, we have to be aware of what the birth mother is doing in utero. And often the case is they don't have access to things, whether it's due to poverty or lack of funds, or just choice. Sometimes they use certain substances, and
Hmm.
that is going to affect the baby. So, the adoption and foster care journey, you have got to be open to other people making poor choices that will affect your child and that it is no fault to the child. Whether that baby is just being born, they have 9 months in the womb. So they have 40 weeks being affected by whoever is supposed to be taking good care of their personal body. And especially in adoption, that's just not always the case that they're taking good care of their body. I mean, sometimes they are. I have a good friend, Leah Outen, who placed her child for adoption at 16 years old, and she wrote a memoir about it. And she wrote another book about flourishing hope and hope for unwed mothers. And so there is a good way to do it, but often an unwed mother is having a hard time making ends meet. They're in a difficult place in their life, and sometimes they're not able to make the best of decisions. So you have to be open to that. And being trauma informed is like a 50-year journey. Like there's just so much to learn. It's overwhelming. There's so much knowledge that is available, but it's impossible to soak it all up before you need to know it. And so, in our journey as adoptive parents and foster parents, we have had constant education about being trauma informed. It has helped a lot. It has actually, I believe that God led us into foster care for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is that it really has helped us with our daughters because we were getting helpful knowledge, encouragement, and training, pretty hardcore training and various ways that we can help our daughters, specifically with sensory issues. You've heard of like fidget spinners and
Yeah.
hammock swings, and there's all of these tools that are on the market that allow kids to express themselves when they're having a hard time sitting still. I was at the library the other day and they had these amazing chairs that were just like a circle, but it like wiggled and moved as I sat there. And I was like, this is so cool. I would have done so much better if I had one of these like while I was watching TV or something. So we have like a fishy, it's like a spinny chair where our daughters can sit on it and they hold on to the edges and they just spin, 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 spin. We have a hammock swing that they can go in there. and just move their bodies. And so it's less like normal exercise and more like specific vestibular, proprioceptive, like input. One of our daughters is a sensory seeker, so she'll like crash her body into things on purpose. And
Hmm.
um, so just being open to neurodiversity and the way that our kids' brains work. I've learned a lot through books, through podcasts, through training. Robin Goebel, she does raising kids with big baffling behaviors. And her book was just complicated. I had a hard time processing everything she was trying to teach me because the brain is incredibly complex. Everybody knows this, but she tries to explain it in a way and I still wasn't grasping it. So I know that the information is there and that's why I say it's just hard to soak up all that information. But when your eyes are open to neurodiversity and sensory challenges in some kids. And even as adults, I think you learn a lot about yourself as you're navigating these things with kiddos. Um, Sensory stuff is just like, hey, you like this certain smell or you like this texture. Or, what about hearing a monster truck or a motorcycle zoom past me just makes my whole body freak out. Like, I hate that sound so much. I will never have a big truck because just the loud sound of a truck going past is just terrible.
Yeah.
And so, I think everybody has things that they like and they don't like. And we often forget that and we don't pay attention or honor each other's differences. Um, so being trauma informed has been my greatest area of growth over the last several years. I would say that before our daughters came to us, I didn't have a clue. And now I have at least, some clue.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. How long have you been how long have you been foster parenting? And
So we started when the girls were 3 and 2,
okay.
and we've been working with teen girls. So
Okay.
two full years of working with teen girls in a residential environment. So we live there for like a week at a time, and then um, live off duty for a week at a time, or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So we've been
Okay.
living in two places for 2 years. We've had two homes, tons of
Wow. Okay.
toothbrushes, tons of second pairs of clothes and pants and shoes and medicine. I don't know how long we're going to get to do this, to be completely honest. It's been pretty taxing on our family. My girls have done really well, but working with teens from hard places, and as my girls are getting older, it is affecting them in different ways. And our eyes have been open to some things that are just really difficult to navigate. And so,
Hmm.
I'll be honest, I don't know that I just my heart breaks for the kids in the foster care system because there's not enough
Yeah.
people helping them um, and praying for them. They need a lot of help with education. They fall behind in school. They need a lot of help just learning normal habits and having healthy relationships. And I often feel overwhelmed by all of the needs that these kiddos have through no fault of their own. But at the same time, I have absolutely fallen in love with them, and they have changed my world. They've changed my life. My next book is about all that we've learned through foster parenting. And if I don't get to do this very much longer, I'm so grateful because God has done a huge work in our family and in our marriage. Our marriage has strengthened as foster parents. I was
That's awesome
reluctant.
because I feel
Yeah.
like you'd hear the opposite a lot of times. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, God is answering prayers that I had 10 years ago
Hmm.
for our marriage. And I mean, I got spoiled. Like he would go grocery shopping and I would put the teenagers to bed, and like we had division of labor because we both were working full time and we were able to have our kids in the house, and it was just like I'm used to having him around now, and I feel like oh no, what if he gets a real job and he has to go to work and I don't get him just hanging around in my house? I mean, some days it was annoying. I was like, okay, you're my coworker and my husband and my, it's just too much. Like you
Yeah.
gotta go to the gym or something, please.
Yeah. Got to get out of the house somehow. Yeah.
Just go somewhere, please. Take a very long walk, or I will take a very long walk. And so there was a lot to work through, but overall, like absolutely, God has grown our marriage and strengthened our
Yeah.
relationship and given us a lot of really good memories. We've had some hard times for sure, but I I've loved working with the teen girls. I think I will never view foster care the same after working with them
Yeah.
this closely for 2 years.
Yeah. That's great. You said something a minute ago. It was like God has given you now all the things you wanted 10 years ago or something along those lines.
Yeah, he's
And
answered prayers about my marriage that
yeah.
I've been praying for, and God used an incredibly difficult job, like fostering a bunch of teenage girls,
Yeah.
to answer those prayers about our marriage.
It made me wonder, how have you navigated I guess the reality and maybe come to accept the reality that like this idea and this dream that you had, it looks different than you had. God has answered it in a different way than maybe you wanted. And I think that's probably the journey for a lot of us in our Christian walk. I know for me, in my career, that's definitely been the case. I had a vision of what I thought my career would look like, and it's taken a different route. And I've come to accept it and love it for what it is. But I know when we have our own selfish desires and that they ended up looking differently, um, that can be a hard thing. So how have you wrestled with that, navigated that, come to accept that, et cetera?
When you're waiting, you do have a visual, and we all do. That's very normal. Like, what else are we going to have? We're not going to be able to picture exactly what God has for us because there's a thousand choices. But in 5 years, you'll be able to look back. And I'm at that point for sure where I say, like, these are my kids. Like, they're God's first, Ashley's second, and then they're mine third. I don't want any other kids. I don't want different kids. I don't regret not doing IVF. These are my daughters.
Hmm.
I share them with a lot of people, primarily their birth mother. I do share them. Who cares? She gave me my kids. Of course, I don't mind sharing. She's the one who gave me the two greatest gifts of my life. Um, my heart, and I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're going through infertility because it royally sucks. But my heart has healed in many ways
Hmm.
because of the stages of grief that I've been able to walk through and the gifts that God has given me and the opportunities He's given me to raise other people's children, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
There are so many kids that need homes, so many kids that need families. You don't have to imagine the family that God has for you. Just open your heart. And and this could apply to anything. This could apply to career. It could apply to family. It could apply to that really difficult relationship with your in-laws or your siblings. Um, I've had to do a lot of surrendering lately because things are changing. I'm going through a time of transition, change. Uh, it's hard not to freak out, but I've gone through enough in my life where I know like the Lord is like He's good.
Hmm.
He's he's fine. He doesn't need me to tell him what to do. So, it's just a lot of embracing, a lot of surrendering, a lot of humbling and palms up living of letting
Hmm.
just letting go. Like we're not in control and trust me, you don't want to be in control.
Thank you so much for sharing all this because I think obviously it goes without saying the work that you do as an adoptive parent, really as any parent, foster parent, adoptive parent, it's so important. And you're right, these kids, they need so much help when they're in that system. And I saw it to some degree as a teacher, and it breaks your heart because you're like, a lot of times the situation that they go home to, and there are some foster parents, obviously, who are great. And then I have encountered some who I'm like, why do you even do this? You don't seem to care about the kids. I don't know. I don't know what all the incentives are to being a foster parent. So maybe people do it for illicit reasons. I don't know. But to me, it's like this is something you would only do if you truly have a heart to help raise these kids. So I do have a heart for them, and I have compassion and I have empathy for people like you that have done that from a parental standpoint. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. As we get to the end here, the name of the show is In No Hurry. And so I always like to ask at the very end of the show, sometimes it's always a weird pivot, but when your life is sort of like crazy, you've got all kinds of kids going on. You said at one point you had 10 people in the house. You guys are
Mhm.
moving around a lot. You said sometimes you got to tell your husband to kind of get out and do his own thing. What does Kim do to slow down and kind of just enjoy her life and relax to kind of peel back from the business of your life?
I'll give you a visual. Yesterday, it had been a while since we had childcare. So, and this has happened very many times where I'm like in my head counting all of the days that nobody had school or someone was sick, or because with teenagers in the house, you often have like one person home, and then that means you haven't been kid free for days.
Hmm.
And then if you count the weekend, sometimes it's been longer. So I asked someone to watch my kiddos for a few hours, and Kevin and I went somewhere. And before I left, I just went in the freezer and I grabbed my little pint of dairy-free ice cream. Um, it's like the chocolate brownie by Ben and Jerry's, and I love it. And I grabbed a disposable spoon, very important, and I just took it with me. And as I walked towards the car, I showed my husband and I shook it back and forth, and he just rolled his eyes at me. And I got in the car and I let it melt a little bit, and I just lived my life eating that ice cream at 4:30 in the afternoon.
There you go.
Um, so I think self-care is such a dumb word. It's so confusing. It's so hard to figure out and navigate, especially as a foster and adoptive mom. You're just like, self-care, really? But ice cream, I mean, for me, it's the thing. I've eaten dairy-free ice cream on some of the worst days. One time I didn't have a spoon, and my teenager had been just bananas. I mean, to the point where I was like, this is bad. Like, this is call on call and get some help bad.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just like eating ice cream without a spoon. I won't tell you how exactly that went because that's not as nice as of a visual, but it was a brand new container, so the top was there for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a low point, and God made dairy-free ice cream for me, and I have given Ben and Jerry's a lot of money in the last few years.
That's awesome. I do enjoy dairy-free ice cream. It usually sits better with me than traditional ice cream. So
Mm-hmm.
when you get
Mm-hmm.
older, your body doesn't respond to food the same way that it used to. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's anybody who's younger, that's what you have to look forward to is your body will change. Surprise. Yeah. Uh, well, thank you so much again for coming on the show and for sharing all of this. I would love for people who are listening that haven't already connected with you to do so. So if they want to find your work, I know that you're on Substack. Obviously, you've got some books. Where can people find you? Where do you hang out the most? And where can they find your books and your other work?
KimPatton.com is going to be the hub. I do like Substack. I'm on Instagram, Foster Mama Friend, and my books are all on Amazon. If you join my email list, you will be notified of when the next book is coming out. I will need to put together a launch team. There will be perks and hopefully free ebooks. I talked with the publisher and I was like, can I have ebook codes? Is that part of this deal? Because I need ebook codes for marketing purposes. But it should be coming out next year at the latest. And it's going to be about foster care and adoption. And so I really would love anybody who knows a foster mama, just get in contact with me. I can share resources. And the Foster Mama Journal is just a beautiful way for foster parents to keep track of the kids that are in their home, pray scripture over them, and just do lots of journaling, gratitude, free journaling, because that's just, for some moms, that's how they're processing everything. And the journal is beautiful. It's a beautiful place to process through everything that you're going through when you're dealing with kids from hard places.
Yeah. Great. That's awesome. We'll have links to all of that too in the show notes so people can click on that and they can click to follow you on social media or wherever else and click to find your books and your website in the show notes. But Kim, thank you so much. It was awesome to talk with you. Thank you so much again for sharing your story. And it's crazy whenever you start to be a little bit more open about your own story, you start to find others who have had similar journeys, and you can kind of obviously there's differences, but it's nice to, I don't know what the word is, like uh, commiserate or
Misery loves company.
yeah, just it's nice to chat and feel like there's people that understand, the situation you're in, and I know that there are people who are listening that maybe haven't shared publicly what they're going through, but this hopefully can resonate with them. So thank you so much again for doing this and for sharing everything, and would encourage anybody listening to give Kim a follow and check out her work. So,
Yes, thank you for having me. Do you mind if I pray for you and your wife as you're going to do this
oh,
telehealth appointment?
I would love that.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for your gifts to us. Thank you for providing exactly what we need. We don't know what we need, and you do. And so thank you for just offering us a life to live for you, for something bigger than ourselves. I pray for Cole and Emily as they're going through the infertility journey. And it is hard, it is emotional, it is taxing, it is physically taxing, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Um, it is not a journey that any of us wanted to take. But I just pray that you'll give them grace. I pray that Emily will be calm and just receptive to your love and your grace and your compassion. I pray that Cole will lead his family well. I pray for the doctors and everyone involved in the medical personnel. And as they're looking through their file and trying to help them, I just pray that you'll give them wisdom and clarity. But I just pray for Cole and Emily to have peace and just to know that there are kids out there who need families, and we don't know the timing of how you're growing their family. We don't know how it's going to happen or when, but we do know that there are kids that need families. So I just pray that you'll lead them to the exact kids that you have for them, and just help them to learn more about you in this process and to be open to everything that you're teaching them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Well, thank you. I'm sure we'll talk again soon, but it was great having you
Yes,
on.
yes, absolutely. Thank you, Cole.
Wow. Very kind of Kim. I think that's the first time I've ever had anybody pray for me on this show while we recorded. So that is just very thoughtful, very kind. I very much appreciated that. I know my wife Emily does as well. And literally right after Kim and I recorded, Emily and I had an appointment with a fertility specialist. And so I really appreciated her offering that prayer. And I just am so grateful for her sharing her testimony and sharing her story. I just feel like if you've gone through anything like that, you understand how meaningful it is to feel like you can empathize with other people and feel like you're not alone. I know when I wrote about our story of infertility, just seeing the different people that reached out to us who you don't even know have gone through that or are going through it, it was really special just to feel like there's this community of people. Not that I want anybody to have to go through that, but to know that there are people out there who you can confide in and talk to about it and understand exactly what it is that you're going through. It's really, really helpful. So I'm very grateful for Kim for coming on the show. Definitely give her a follow. Check out her website. Check out her work. You can see all of the links to that in the show notes. But as always, thank you so much for tuning in this week, and hope you guys have a great week and a chance to relax and not be in a hurry. And we'll catch you next week.